Good afternoon. I recognize that we are at 1:30. We still just need a couple more colleagues to join us. So we have quorum and we'll get the show on the road. So just bear with us for a few more minutes. All right, good afternoon, y'all. So we're still short one for quorum. We have a couple council members who are still on the way. However, I don't want to gum up the works in terms of folks in busy schedules. I know we have folks here for public comment and we have a couple presentations. And so before we officially adopt the agenda, since we don't have quorum, there's some things we can still do to help move this thing forward. And so I would actually like to start with public comment so that we can have that on the record. And then from there, if we're still short quorum, we can move into at least one of the presentations, so that way we can start moving things forward. So I know there's a few folks here for communication items, for appointments. Unfortunately, we need quorum for that portion of the agenda, but at the very least, we can get this part moving forward. So. And just will apologize ahead of time because it's been a while since I've had to read cursive. So if I mispronounce your name, please feel free to correct it in the microphone so it's reflected correctly in the public record. And so with that, Dr. Williams, if you could come to the podium. And I couldn't read your first name, so please state your full name so that's reflected for the public record.
Good afternoon. I'm Maturia Chase Williams.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the Social Action Committee of the Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporation. Our chapter is 100 years old and has been advocating for social justice from its inception. Georgia has a long history of intentional oppression, unjust policies, and forced labor imposed on people of African descent, beginning as early as 1526, when Africans first came to the state. Although these practices predate the establishment of the city of Atlanta, our city embraced these oppressive practices once established. From enslavement to Jim Crow laws, where separate was never equal, present-day practices of redlining, disparities in public education, and a myriad of other oppressive policies and practices in this city, it is apparent that people of African descent who are citizens in this city are due restitutions for wrongs done and opportunities blocked. I started my life in Atlanta as a freshman at Spelman College in the fall of 1965. Though a Texan, I never imagined living anywhere else besides this lovely city, aesthetically pleasing and progressive in many ways. In spite of my admiration of this city, I was not blind to inequities experienced as a Black woman in this city. As members of the Social Action Committee and our beloved sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, we are requesting that a reparations task force be established and a representative from the Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated be placed on this task force. As natives and our residents of this city, we have experienced and or observed disparities in the workplace as consumers. And a myriad of places and situations simply because we are Black. I call on the City Council of Atlanta to establish a reparations task force to determine ways in which this city can provide restitution for harms inflicted on citizens of African descent because of their race. With me this afternoon is Dr. Sheila Flemings, who will also speak in favor of this ask for a reparations task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chase Williams. Before we move into the next speaker for public comment, we do have quorum, so what I'll do is take a step back from what I said about 5 minutes ago, and we'll go ahead and move the meeting to order, and then from there, we'll go back, and after we do the agenda in minutes, we'll get back to public comment. So just a quick audible. With that being said, hi, I'm Councilmember Jason Dozier. I'm the chair of the Community Development and Human Services Committee. I call this meeting of the Tuesday, October 24th, 2023, Community Development and Human Services Committee to order. I'm joined by fellow council members Antonio Lewis, and to my left, Councilmember Jason Winston and Councilmember Byron D. Amos. First item is to adopt the agenda. And just for the public's awareness, I know what's printed is printed, but just a correction to how we're going to proceed with things. We have at least 3 people here for appointments. And so after public comment, we'll take those before our presentation. So that's the adjustment there. And so with that, I'll move to adopt the agenda. There's a second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the agenda is adopted, 4 yeas, 0 nays. That takes us to the approval of the minutes. I'll go ahead and move to approve minutes. There's a second by Councilmember Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, minutes are approved, 4 yeas, 0 nays. That takes us back to public comment. And one of the things I did not say, and so thank you, Dr. Chase Williams, for adhering to the 3 minutes, but we do give our speakers 3 minutes to speak for public comment. I know it's a little different than you might experience when you come to a full council meeting where you only have 2 minutes. So just wanted to clarify that. And I try to gently let you know when we have about 30 seconds remaining. I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, but I want to make sure you're aware of the time. And I do want to acknowledge we have been joined by Council Member Matt Westmoreland. All right, our next speaker, Dr. Sheila Fleming. Please come to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
The research by the Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated found that as a result of enslavement, discrimination, and an unrelenting desire for white supremacy, Black Atlantans currently experience disparities in nearly every forkway in industry. The case for establishing a study about reparations for Black Atlantans is poignant but necessary. The history of the city having laws, practices, and leadership that negatively affected Black people in almost every sector of life from its very beginning underscore the need for repair and remedy. Some examples include, in the 1890s, the Supreme Court allowed Georgia to levy taxes on Black and white citizens alike while providing a public school for white children only. The consequences of the 1906 massacre of Black Atlantans have not been fully studied and recompense addressed. Centuries of housing and land use policies denied Black households access to the same level of home ownership, education, credit, and neighborhood opportunities offered to white households. The consequences of this have directly resulted in disproportionate poverty and unemployment rates for Black people in America. In 1957, the city bought 600 acres of land in Somerville, Mechanicsville, and Peoplestown, displacing thousands of Black residents and closing more than 100 Black-owned businesses in favor of development for white residents. During the 1960s and 70s, Mayor Ivan Allen Jr. built the Atlanta Stadium, according to a Georgia Tech researcher, to thought proposers requesting to use the land for public housing for low-income residents. More Black residents were displaced to provide extra parking spaces for the stadium. In the 1990s, as Atlanta prepared to host the Olympics, the city demolished its public housing. Atlanta was the first city to introduce public housing in 1935, and by 2011, they were all gone. 30,000, mostly Black low-income residents were evicted or displaced from their housing in the city. In 2005, the Atlanta Beltline was planned as a multi-billion-dollar mega project and is a major driver of gentrification in Atlanta and is resulting in another wave of displacement of Black residents for surrounding neighborhoods. The Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated provided a position paper on reparations for the City Council's work. We hope you have a copy of that. As indicated, that position paper in the statement of intent authored by the Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta, a commission should investigate evidence-based harms through empirical research supported by qualitative and quantitative data to develop a feasibility study for reparations for Black Atlantans. Thank you.
Fleming. All right, the next speaker I have is Frederick Reed. Frederick Reed. Okay, and also recognize that a few of the speakers have listed grants as to the reason why you signed in. There is a public hearing that will be a part of our agenda tied to grant funding that the Department of Grants and Community Development is applying for. And so I will get some clarification as we go through each name if you're intending to actually speak to that. If you don't want to speak at all, that's fine. I'm not going to make you speak, but I want to just get that clarification as I go through the list. So, Deborah Bell. Okay, no worries. Ayanna Lawson. No worries. Brenda Tompkins. Keep on going. Larry Bowder. Okay. And then Miss Henry Jordan. And you'll have 3 minutes, Miss Jordan.
Give down to the Spirit of God to everyone is here. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1st chapter, 1st verse. In the beginning, creation marks the absolute beginning of the temporal and material world. Jesus created income through me by his word, but James Griff and others backing him up is saying it's theirs. And he said unto them, how is it that ye sought me? Wist not that I must be about my Father's business? Luke 2nd chapter 49 verse. Wish ye not, or do you not realize there was a certain tension between Jesus' responsibility to parents on the one hand and his heavenly Father on the other. Jesus' success come forth in me and you by his word and his will. And Moab shall be destroyed from being a people, because he has not magnified himself against the Lord. He has magnified himself against the Lord. Jeremiah 48 chapter 42nd verse. Moab's only hope is in making peace with Judah. You will never be bigger than God. The enemy plan to place you in bondage must be stopped. For I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. St. John 6 chapter 38 verse. I came down from heaven is another indication of God, Jesus' deity. God created you and me to do his will. So we should ask Christ's power to carry out his will for us. We are self-destructive when we disobey Jesus. I asked Jesus to give James Griff a chance. He said James is against his word. James told me himself, he was called by Jesus to preach Christ's word. When you're called to preach God's word, you are also called to live his righteous word. You're also called to fight for justice, but sometimes you don't feel like you fight for justice. And what things go through the crack. But we want the power to conquer sin in us, around us, and in others, because the flesh is deceptive also. I know I need Christ to control me. And I'm seeing what's going on in the world today about many failures of people in their lives, and seeing what they call good is evil. What China doing? I just thinking about this, what's going on. And well, this is God was said that the people will whack worse and worse, and that's what they're doing. And I know I feel bad about it, but you know, some people don't like they even worried about it. But I am, because what Christ has told me about the people in the world today, that we need Christ more and more each day, because evil is taking over. Instead of Christ taking over in us, we're letting evil take us over. Thank you. Obey Jesus.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Our next speaker is Karanisha Coleman. Okay, no worries. And then Chef Dr. Kenneth Wilhoit. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to everyone. I said good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so very much. I feel so good. All right. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm serious. Every time I speak, you're going to learn something, because that's what I do. I teach. My name is Chef Dr. Kenneth Wilhoit, the creator of the Soul Food Museum that has chronicled over 400 years of African Americans' contributions to food, hospitality, agriculture, and service. This is our 20th anniversary. Yes, I said 20th anniversary in the city of Atlanta, providing services for our communities. I, Dr. Will Hood, would like the support of the City Council as we continue to celebrate and commemorate our 20th anniversary. I've asked before at the City Council meetings for help. I've passed out information asking and seeking help. I want help. I voted for you, and I expect for you to help me to be able to help the community. And I'm sure you can understand that. I'm humbly asking, please help me help my people. And when I say my people, I mean all people in this city. But I got a part to play. All right, so we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. I've asked for someone to appoint someone to help me with this celebration. Let me go ahead, go forward. Down Auburn Avenue, money was spent to redevelop it some way. And they spent a lot of money putting up information on the corners. I've lived in the community for 23 years. I haven't seen not one human being standing up and reading none of the historic information that was put on these tall, colorful cones, look like. So the work is not finished. My suggestion is we put bronze statues along all the way up and down Auburn Avenue. I want to thank you for this opportunity. And the MARTA, the trolley, that's really a train, needs to be named for Black History Month, the Soul Train. And then people will ride it. It will make sense. Right now, it's considered to be a train to nowhere. That's the word on the streets. It goes in a circle. No, it goes nowhere. So Don Cornelius committed suicide on December the 1st. He killed himself. We're going to honor and recognize him for his contributions to America and the world through the TV show Soul Train. And that train is going to be wrapped. That's all, just wrapped. We have a sponsor. Call me, Soul Food Museum. Please, love the work you're doing. I'm not up here complaining about nothing. You're doing a good job. I'm proud of you, young folk. Keep it up.
Thank you, Chef Doctor. All right. So just for the public's awareness, there were actually 2 sign-in sheets in the front, one for the general public comment and one for the upcoming public hearing. However, recognizing there's some confusion, I'm also going to read the names off of this list, so then that way we can just make sure we're in the right place. So Shadrick Moore. Shadrick Moore, maybe I pronounced it. Okay. I'll ask his name again after I get to the end of the list, and we'll go from there. Taniro Washington, are you here to speak for okay. And then Lauren Welsh, good to see you. For the public hearing item, not for general public comment? Well, I guess let me clarify. Are you to a legislative item for today's agenda or to the public comment for the public hearing that we'll be doing? So you're here to speak to that item, or you're here to speak? Okay. No worries, we're good. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Shadrick Moore, if you can hear us, just want to confirm that you don't intend to speak for public comment. I have Grant on as a note here, so I'm assuming that he signed in like everyone else did for the Grant portion of the conversation. So if hearts and minds are full, we will move off of public comment. I believe that concludes public comment. And that takes us to appointments. We are at section G on the, I'm sorry, not section G. Section H, thank you so much. On the agenda, item number 2, Ms. Tanya Greer. I'm sorry, Ms. Bobby Spiller. Please come to the podium. And then Mr. Evans, if you can sound the caption, and then we'll go from there.
Item number 2 is 23C 5107, a communication from Tanya Greer. County Clerk to the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, submitting the appointment of Ms. Bobby Spiller to serve as a member of the Atlanta Beltline Affordable Housing Advisory Board. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
All right, Ms. Spiller, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this appointment.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bobby Spiller. I am a realtor, and I reside in Boulevard Heights, which is really close to Chosewood Park. So I was asked by Chairman Rob Pitts to join the board. Like, we were having a conversation about the work that I'm doing with Friends of Chosewood Park and how we've raised over $3 million in the last 2 years for park improvements. And he was just impressed with that. And then he asked me to join the board. And he said that, you know, maybe the city could use my services. So that's why I'm here.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Councilman Winston.
Yeah, I just wanted to just thank you, Ms. Spiller, for all your hard work and volunteerism in District 1. We've had a chance to work together on several projects, including in the Chosewood Park and the Boulevard Heights community. And so with that, I'd like to move approval.
There's a motion by Winston, second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
The communication is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Congratulations, Ms. Spiller, and thank you for your
Thank
service
you.
to the city of Atlanta. All right, next, Mr. Richard Taylor, if you can come to the podium. Mr. Evans, you can sound the caption.
Item number 3 is 23C5108, communication from Ann Phillips, President, Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, submitting the appointment of Mr. Richard Taylor to serve as a member of the Atlanta Beltline Tax Allocation District Advisory Committee. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
All right, Mr. Taylor, similar question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the appointment.
Yeah, my name is Richard Taylor. I'm an affordable housing developer here in Atlanta. Work mostly on the west side, and also a member of APAB, and worked with them and wanted to bring my services to the board. Thought it would be a very big help.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Councilman Amos. Councilman Amos and Councilman Lewis.
No question, just want to say thank you. Been knowing Mr. Taylor for a while. He has delivered as far as developer, doing what he say he's going to do and with his team. So with that, I make a motion to approve after we hear the final comments.
Councilman Lewis. There's a motion by Amos, a second by Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
As favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you for your service to the city of Atlanta. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming down.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right. Our next person, Mr. Jim Schroeder. Mr. Evans, you can sound the caption.
Item number 4 is 23C5109, a communication from Council President Doug Shipman appointing Mr. James Schroeder to serve as a member of the Westside Affordable Housing Trust Fund Commission, representing the for-profit development community. This appointment is for a term of 3 years.
Mr. Schroeder, similar. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the appointment.
Sure. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Jim Schroeder. I've spent a 20-year career in real estate, including the last 10 years on the real estate investment and finance side. I spent about 8 years with Tribridge Residential, at the time one of the largest landlords and owners of multifamily apartments in Atlanta. And I focus my role as a CFO, raising capital. And really my passion is housing and delivering private market housing to workforce housing here in Atlanta. So really looking to bring more creative solutions, more capital, and really grow that source of capital for the workforce housing here in Atlanta, and particularly in the affordable housing. So Doug Shipman asked me to serve, and I'd be happy to do so.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? There's a motion to approve by Westmoreland, second by Amos. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Actually, well, you want to? Councilman Lewis?
I want to say today I was moved by the public comments of the sisters from Delta. They talked about affordable housing in Atlanta. We just had 3 straight appointments, all were realtor, developer. And I'm just thinking about what they said happened. We the first city that created affordable housing in 1935. 2011, we were first ones to get rid of it. And so that's why I'm up here cringing right now, because I heard them. So can I ask, do you live in Atlanta?
I do. I live in Old Fourth Ward.
Okay. Connection to the city. I appreciate you and you listening to them today. You understand what we're trying to build, and we're trying to make sure the city still works for people whose mom was killed when they was 2 and their dad in and out of jail. They're gonna need these resources that this city has. Second.
May I respond?
Yes.
Thank you for your comments, and also thank you for the comments from the Lady Smith Delta chapter. I look at Egbert Perry as really my hero and the role model I look up to, and what he did for housing in the 90s set an example, not just for Atlanta, but nationally, and how we transform highly concentrated low-income housing to make it more mixed income, and really make that model that works for housing across not just low income, but middle income, and really across that spectrum. So I really look to him as an aspiration, and I want to deliver that same service.
And I want to say I apologize for saying it when you came up. I felt like this was the last one, and I apologize. It wasn't you.
It's a very important issue.
And the item has already been motioned and seconded, so I think we're good. The item is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays, and thank you for your service, your continued service to the city of Atlanta. Thank you for coming down. All right. And colleagues, just if y'all will indulge me, I recognize just based on all the folks that signed in for public comment for this grant conversation, if y'all don't mind, I would actually like to take the public hearing item first. And Commissioner Lyon, I know you're already here for your presentation, but if you don't mind, we can do that first. And I imagine there's some questions about process, because I got a few emails before the meeting as well. And so what we'll do is, colleagues, we need to open the public hearing. And so there's a motion to open the public hearing by Westmoreland, second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the public hearing is open. Mr. Evans, if you can sound the caption, and then Commissioner Lyon, I don't know if you or someone from your team is going to speak to it, but you can go ahead and come up to the podium, and then after we sound the caption, we'll go from there.
Item number 1 is 23C 5113, a communication from the Community Development Human Services Committee on the submission of an application to the Pathways to Removing Obstacles to Housing Pro-Housing Grant from the Office of Community Planning and Development, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, pursuant to Ordinance 230-1478, to further identify and address the obstacles to housing in the city and execute any agreements related to the acceptance of the grant in an amount of up to $10 million and 0 cents.
Commissioner Lyon, if you don't mind sharing with us, what this is. I think my understanding is, I know we had some legislation before this body about a month ago for your department to apply for federal funding, and this is kind of as part of a HUD requirement. We need to do a public hearing so that we have the ability to apply for and receive those funds for further disbursement. But can you talk through the process? I think there's been some confusion, at least from some of the folks who are here today, who believe that this is maybe that there's a NOFA that's already been issued, and I'm assuming that. So you just talk through the process, and we can kind of go from there.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, council members of CDHS and Chair Dozier. I am Deborah London, Commissioner for the Department of Grants and Community Development, and Genevieve Jones is the Director for the department's division or Office of Compliance. So she'll also be here to provide some guidance and assistance, and I'm actually going to turn it over to her. I also want to clarify just really quickly that we got a lot of emails from individuals believing this is an opportunity for them to apply for personal grants for housing purposes. It is not, and we responded to as many of those as we could. But of course, we'll detail some other aspects of that. But I will turn it over now to Ms. Jones to just give a brief synopsis of the process for this grant.
Good afternoon, Genevieve Jones, the Director of Entitlement and Competitive Compliance for the Department of Grants. The Pro-Housing Grant, which is Pathways to Removing Obstacles, is a competitive grant by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. What competitive means is that everyone can apply if they fit the criteria, i.e. Cities, states, and different nonprofit organizations can apply for funding on a competitive level. We are putting in an application for the Pro Grant. The purpose of the Pro Grant is to identify and remove barriers to affordable housing production and preservation. One of the main goals of this is to assist with policy issues and anything that the city has already started to remove the obstacles to affordable housing. So our grant application, which is available for public view on the department's website, is just really talking through what we plan on doing with those fundings if we are awarded. Oh, I do apologize. You did ask me to speak to the requirement for the public hearing. HUD does require us to get public input, and we did that through 2 ways, public comment. So we had a public comment period that ended yesterday. It was a 15-day public comment period, which allowed individuals to reach out and speak to the elements of the grant application that we were proposing. And then today, the public hearing is to allow individuals to also speak to those elements of the application. And all of those elements will be included as part of our application that we submit. The original deadline was October 30th. They have since moved it to November 6th due to some maintenance that HUD is having on their website.
And just as a point of clarification, the public comment is centered around, should we even be applying for this in the first place versus how should those funds, once received, be spent? Is that
correct? The public comment is, do you approve for the city to apply, and why do you think that it's okay for us to apply? Yes.
Thank you. Councilman Lewis.
Thank you all for coming out to explain this. My first question is, what's an example of an obstacle to housing?
I think that's a trick question. Is it not? No, I was just joking. There are lots of obstacles.
I really don't, I just asked, I really don't know.
Absolutely. We'll focus on obstacles that the city of Atlanta has endured or continues to attempt to overcome. Infrastructure. Yes, sir.
And I'll tell you why I asked that, because you said it won't be personal going to people's pocket, right?
Well, you know, the city's Department of Grants and Community Development also is responsible for HUD's entitlement grants. And it's HUD that's releasing these funds. So we wanted to clarify that this is not our typical NOFA for those applications. Those applications are where our subrecipients come forward and they apply for funding for services that they are already providing. Here, the city is the actual applicant. We will be the one submitted the application and doing the work, or in conjunction with our partners. So we're not looking for individuals or sub-grantees to apply for the funds. So the obstacles that you probably envision are the same types of obstacles we're looking to address, to attempt to address, but in this instance, we're not asking subrecipients to apply. For instance, the infrastructure issues that we know exist in the city, the ability to build the accessory dwellings.
I got you. We're together now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? All right. Well, before we take any action, I do want to receive the public comment that folks that signed up for. I recognize that with that clarification, folks who signed up for this portion of the agenda might not feel compelled to speak. So I'm gonna go through the names again. So let me know if you still intend to speak. But I just want to make sure we are going through the list so that no one's coming after me saying that I stifled public comment. So the first that signed up specifically for grant, Frederick Reed. Okay, thank you. Deborah Bell. Okay. Ayanna Lawson. Brenda Tompkins. Sorry to put y'all on the spot, but we're just gonna keep going through it. Larry Bowder. Okay. Karishina Coleman. Okay. And then that takes us to the other lists. Shadrick Moore. Tanira Washington. All right, we're good. Thank y'all. So with that, I will go ahead and move to close the public hearing. There's a second by Councilman Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, we are out of the public hearing. I think that was 5 yeas, 0 nays. We do have one action to take related to this item, and that is to accept and file. So I will go ahead and move to accept and file. There's a second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the item has been accepted and filed, 5 yeas, 0 nays. I know we have our parliamentarian in the room, so if we misstepped with any of that parliamentary jujitsu, you would have corrected us, so it sounds like we're on the clear. All right, that takes us back to presentations. Commissioner Lonan and Deputy Commissioner Jones, we're on the presentation, so thank y'all for spending some extra time with us today.
Thank you for having us. I want to also bring to your attention that two other members of the Department of Grants and Community Development are here with us today, Michelle Price and Debbie Hairston. All right, this is our quarterly update. I am going to go somewhat quickly because most of the slides are just an update of information that was provided to you last quarter, and I will aim to focus more on where we've had some change. So this is the catchphrase that DGCD strives to accomplish and to live up to every day. We are the Department of Grants and Community Development, doing good in our community, grounded in service, committed to moving Atlanta forward, and dedicated to excellence. The Department of Grants and Community Development is primarily responsible for the 4 HUD entitlement grants that we receive annually. Those include CDBG, Home, ESG, and HOPWA, but we also maintain and operate the city's Section 8 moderate rehab program, which is different from Atlanta Housing's program. We are closing out the Neighborhood Stabilization Program as instructed by HUD. HUD has asked all grantees to close out that program, and the city is working diligently and moving quickly to close that out. We are also tasked with assisting with other departments' competitive grant applications and submitting applications on behalf of the city, just like the program that you just approved, and we thank you for that. The department focuses on serving the city's most vulnerable residents. And last program year, that's what the PY is for, we were able to serve with the significant assistance of our sub-grantees, 1,573 residents with CDBG funding, 1,215 households with HOPWA funding. We assisted with approximately 50 home purchases, and that was through down payment assistance. And we assisted more than 1,000 persons with homeless prevention services. We also aim to align our services with the mayor's 4 pillars. We deployed more than $22 million in entitlement grant funds during that program year. And as I just mentioned, we also assist with the competitive grant applications. The next 2 slides just detail the metrics that we applied to those 4 HUD entitlement grants. So CDBG priorities, I did not do that. All right, ESG priorities, HOPWA priorities, and home priorities. For the first quarter of this fiscal year, the department has assisted with the information that's before you with the 28 grant opportunities, 14 grant applications, 6 of which were actually submitted, and 4 of which have been received. That, for the first quarter of fiscal year 24, totals an amount of $920,712,132 of pending application submissions, $11,534,364 of which has been awarded to date. Those are outside of the HUD entitlement grants. What you have in your packets are the update, the amounts that the city has paid for ESG Home and CDBG and HOPWA through Monday, last Monday. So for instance, we have paid in reimbursement requests from ESG subrecipients as of last Monday, $2,949,579.73, and that's actually the same as of yesterday. But for CDBG, what you have before you for last Monday was $1,988,877, but as of yesterday, that is now $1,992,853 for CDBG. For HOPWA, as of last Monday, we were at $28,418,831, and then as of yesterday, we have paid reimbursement requests totaling $29,073,451. As you already know, it's one thing for our subrecipients to provide services with their own funds and then turn around and ask that we reimburse those funds. We do that with the city's general funds. It is another thing entirely for us to draw down those funds. We pay with the city's general funds, and then we draw down federal funds to repay the city. And it is important to track this so that you all are aware how quickly we are in fact drawing down those funds. As I've explained in the past, each fund has its own separate useful period, the term for which the funds are good. CDBG funds are good for 7 years, and by that I mean we have 7 years to award, to contract for our subrecipients to utilize the funds with the residents, ask for reimbursements, we pay the reimbursements, we turn around and draw down to reimburse ourselves. So CDBG funds, the clock starts ticking once we execute the grant agreement, and it's good for 7 years. Home is good for 8 years, ESG for 24 months, and HOPWA for 3 years. So here on this particular slide, you'll see that for the funds that the city received in FY16, we have awarded, expended, reimbursed, and drawn down all but $1.3 million of home funds, and we are on track to fully draw down those funds. For 17, we have done the same for all but $1.2 million of CDBG funds and $1.3 million of home funds. For 18, $1.5 million of what was allocated of CDBG funds, $1.8 million of what was allocated for home funds. For 19, we've got CDBG remaining, home remaining, and HOPWA remaining. It is important to note that we got an extension from HUD for the HOPWA funds received for FY19, and those funds must be fully drawn by December of this year. We are on track to draw down all of these funds, but I just want to stress to you that we are in fact on track to meet that deadline that HUD provided. For FY20 funds, you'll see the amounts allocated and the balance remaining. HOPWA 20 expires this week. So we were awarded as a city $22,795,464. We are on track to draw down every penny of that. Now, those subrecipients, our project sponsors who received HOPWA funds to utilize in the community, have until this Friday to fully expend what they were awarded. We're not concerned about that. And then we have a short period of time to turn around, draw it down, and close out that particular funding. So again, I'm bringing that to your attention so that you're aware that that deadline is in fact upon us. And then the same for 21. Most of those funds we still have on hand. The city's most recent allocations are shown on this slide, FY22 and FY23. I do want to stress and share some things here because it's important for you all to be fully informed so you can help educate our residents about this work that we're doing. The payment of reimbursement requests, of course, is very important to the subrecipients because they spend their money. They need us to pay back timely so that they continue accessing funds. It's important to our residents so that they can continue receiving services. It's important to the city so that we can show a need for these funds and that we are responsible stewards of the funds. But it's also very important to HUD, one, so that we can justify the amounts that we are receiving, but also because they track timeliness. And timeliness isn't just a catchphrase, there's actually a calculation tied to that as it relates to CDBG funds. So every year, HUD takes the grantee's total amount of CDBG on hand for all of the years that we have funds remaining. And they're not concerned about what we have remaining, say, in Oracle, which is the city system. They're concerned about what we show remaining in IDIS, which is HUD's financial system. They take the total amount that's reflected as remaining, and they divide it by the amount of our last allocation. And if that ratio is greater than 1.5, we're in jeopardy of losing funds. The city has, in fact, for the past 2 years, had a ratio higher than 1.5. We are working diligently. We are working as if our heads are on fire to make sure we meet timeliness for this year, but I don't want you all to be caught off guard because there's a chance that we may not. And it's important to understand why we may not. It is not because we are not reimbursing quickly and within the mandated time now. It's because a few years ago we were not doing that. We were not timely contracting, we were not timely awarding, we were not timely reimbursing. All of that has caught up to us. So we're not looking great, but we're looking better than good. So somewhere between good and great. However, as we work to address those mistakes, the obstacles, and to just better our processes, there's just a lot of fixing the past while maintaining and preparing for the future. And we'll be sure to let you know. Now, should we not meet timeliness, our funds aren't going to be taken and just now we turn around and tell our residents we have no funds. It will be important for HUD to know what processes we put in place, and we have a very robust relationship with our HUD reps. But I'm hoping that's the conversation that we won't have to have. An update on our plan of action. Like every other department, we are still working to recruit qualified candidates. Now, a lot of people apply, does not make them qualified. So we're working to identify and recruit qualified candidates and then retain the current talent that we have in the department. We have, in fact, resolved the backlog, but again, in the spirit of transparency, I like telling you the good, but I have to share with you some of the bad also. We have been diligent and consistent in meeting the 30-day goal of reimbursements. However, this past month or two, we have missed that with some of our providers. And it's because of some of our internal processes. There are some delays, and we're working through that. However, we've communicated with them, and they now know when to expect their payments, but it doesn't mean that that wasn't tough on them. We're addressing it and making sure that they understand how we will correct it and try to avoid it going forward. Our average is, in fact, still 30 days, but it's important for you to know that we missed that with a couple of our providers. We're continuing to leverage our HUD TA and our relationship with Atlanta CPD. That office is a great advocate of ours. And so whenever we reach out and have questions, they respond with the best answers that they are willing to give, usually not in writing, but still they respond. We are regularly monitoring our subrecipients in the same manner that HUD monitors us. We have improved our NOFA processes. We relay that information in various ways, online, in person, and we have heard you very clearly that with the next NOFA, you also want to receive that information and help us spread the good word. We are still struggling a little bit with contracting for the same reasons that I have detailed just a few minutes ago. Some of our internal processes just have to change, and then they have to catch up to where we are now. But we've put a new grants management system in place. We have better training. Every staff member has been trained, and onboarding new staff members includes additional training. So making sure that we're just as trained and well and informed as we expect our subrecipients to be is a key goal of ours. We are preparing for our 2025-2029 consolidated plan. Every penny that is spent must fall under what is identified in our comp plan, and the comp plan is good for 5 years, so we're working on the next set and making sure the next consolidated plan, which will come before you, and there will be an opportunity for public input. And then lastly, I want to share that in spite of the obstacles that I've shared with you, you all will recall that one of the biggest issues the city had was with its HUD funding concerning HOPWA specifically. Our last HOPWA monitoring or audit from HUD was in person. They came on site to our department and reviewed our documents, spoke with staff, and then they took their time to review all of what we provided, and they sent us a written letter identifying 0 findings for HOPWA CV. So it's not just me coming and sharing this with you, but in fact, HUD has confirmed that we are way better than we were, and there were 0 findings, and we look forward to applying that level of commitment and change to all of our funding. And with that, I will turn it to you for questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I open the floor to colleagues, I know you alluded to, okay, you missed the mark a little bit on the 30-day goal and that sort of thing, but I think it really undercuts is the right word I'm looking for. Undercuts the amount of work y'all have done to get to that point to where, I know you want to hit your goals, and that's the goal you're giving yourself, but it used to be 144 days that y'all had, the reimbursement period used to be. And the fact that we had an audit from HUD about the HOPWA program that came with a clean bill of health, when we first, at least I guess all 4 of us who are here, when we came on into office to our positions, shortly before we were sworn in, there were some news stories about how we were at risk of giving back a lot of our HOPWA funding because of management challenges and things like that. And so y'all have done it's a public meeting, so I can't say the Lord's work, but y'all done somebody's work to really turn the ship around and to do just a remarkable job in serving the people of Atlanta. So I just want to give y'all kudos. I know the Department of Grants and Community Development isn't a department that people typically think about in terms of serving the city of Atlanta, but just want to give you kudos for y'all's work to make this better than when we first came in office.
Thank you, sir. We have a committed team, and I'm grateful for that team. Thank you.
And then one of the questions that I did have, I know we didn't really talk too much about HOPWA modernization in this conversation, but just for the public's awareness, there's an ongoing conversation about how much money the city's receiving from the federal government to disperse to housing providers in support of the Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS program. We were getting to the tune of about $24 million per year. Now it's closer to $12 to $14 million per year. And we're trying to figure out how to ensure that our service providers are folks who are helping people get off the streets who have such a life-threatening physical ailment. How do we help them? Because they're some of our most vulnerable people. And myself, Council President Shipman, Commissioner Wannen, and members of the administration have a meeting, I guess, on a monthly basis now to figure out what the city's going to do to help address that $10 million gap in shortfall. So I just want to give you kudos and thanks for your leadership on that issue. As part of that conversation, now we talked a little bit about y'all making some internal changes with having a one-stop kind of shop for grant recipients or individuals who are serving, so we have better reporting, more accurate, more real-time reporting. Can you talk to any sort of updates you've had with regards to y'all's exploration of a new CRM or anything along those lines that might potentially?
Yes, sir. Yes. When Mayor stood up the HOPWA Modernization Advisory Team, I know that's not the name, but that's our goal, is to focus on HOPWA modernization. One of the first things we identified is that while there has in fact been a reduction in funding, that 2-year reduction is actually far greater than the $10 million that the city did not receive, because the true impact of that reduction didn't start to hit until this year. When we submitted the recommendations for funding this year, we awarded to Status Home, one of our largest providers, less than the total amount of the reduction. Status Home would have received more than what we didn't get in HOPWA funding. That impact on lives is real. And so what we want to do and what we're aiming to do is to provide a list of attainable and logical, very well thought out recommendations to mayor's office. Now, some of the things that are already ongoing are that all of the administration's affordable housing plans, goals, and steps that have been implemented do not exclude HOPWA recipients or those who would qualify for HOPWA. We need to be sure that we make that better known, more accessible. We are working with some of our larger sub-grantees to make sure that they have access to other funding. For instance, nothing precludes HOPWA project sponsor from also applying for Section 8 as the city operates it. And we're working now, or at least in conversations with what that looks like. We focus primarily on acquisition with the funds that we do have. Because what's great about acquisition with HOPWA funds is that the properties acquired would be permanently affordable. You don't have to worry about the landlord going up because it's owned by the project sponsor, and we put safety measures in place to make sure that those funds stay affordable. So we're working on access to other HUD entitlement funds, access to funds outside of HUD. We're working to apply competitively. We're looking for the program to assist in some ways, and then also just making sure that the public and those who are committed to this work are aware of the efforts even outside of the city. Equally important is making sure it's not just the city of Atlanta that's focusing on this particular impact from modernization, because our HOPWA service area, unlike CDBG Home and ESG, is 29 counties. Now, Atlanta is not in 29 counties, and so we want to be sure that those who have the power of the purse push some of those funds towards HOPWA so that their residents can continue to benefit from the program. That's just some of what's underway. I know that we're meeting again even outside of the modernization meeting to talk about central intake and how to further streamline how we connect people in need with the resources that already exist.
Thank you. All right, opening the floor to colleagues. Councilmember Lewis.
And first, I want to say thank you for your work. I remember that headline flashing across.
I remember too, and I wasn't even here.
It was a real thing, and so to hear you say we didn't send a penny back lets me know you knew how we felt as a city. My question was around the voucher program opening back up for the 3-day period, and how does that affect us? Does that mean we're competing with the state for funding, or does that? And what housing voucher program I mean is the housing choice voucher program.
So ours is different. That's what I mentioned earlier when I say our Section 8 is actually grandfathered in, and no one else, is that right? No one else operates the program the same way that the city does. Ours is project-based. We've got 2 properties. Hopefully, soon we'll have 3 or 4. So we are not impacted in the same way, but our residents are not precluded from reaching out to other services and taking part in other opportunities. However, if you are a resident who is already housed in one of those 2 properties, then unless you're just trying to move and engage in whatever other options you have available, you wouldn't be able to double dip and have both. But I don't think we're precluded in any way from participating, not the residents.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Any other comments or questions from colleagues? All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for taking that public hearing first. May we be excused.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to our next item. Josh Humphreys with the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation, not to be confused with the other AUDC. And colleagues, I asked Mr. Humphreys to join us today just because I recognize that the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation is a new initiative for our city. It's something we have never done before. And so I think this might be the first time you're presenting to this body about this initiative and the work that y'all are doing. So just thank you for taking time to join us this afternoon, and look forward to learning something new.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, everyone. Josh Humphreys with the Office of the Mayor. So I'm going to talk through some high-level stuff. I did present briefly on this when we had some original legislation come through, some trust fund money and initial batch of property. So I'll give an update on kind of where we are and what the next few months are going to look like for the AUDC. So to back up for just a second on kind of the story of how we got here and why of this organization. So Mayor kicked off the Housing Strike Force shortly after taking office with the idea of bringing together all the different public land holding agencies and to think creatively about how we use our public land. The same time we did that, so that group really took off with a lot of momentum. We've got some wins at Bowen Homes and others throughout the Civic Center, work at 2 Peachtree downtown and others to really start moving public land work forward. The same time that we were doing that, though, we also started an effort, part of the Putting Assets to Work incubator program, and looking around the world at international best practices of public land development. And for us, one of the big pieces that came out of that was having a development corporation that's job was to manage a specific portfolio of public land and to move that work forward is really what the best nations around the world are doing and cities around the world are doing on this work. And so what that led to was the creation of the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. This is a lot of logos on one slide, but what it generally shows here is kind of how these pieces fit together. So the organization was created through Atlanta Housing Authority, and a big part of that was, one, this is a housing-oriented organization, and state law allows for affordable housing-related governmental entities to have additional powers that can help move that forward. So it was helpful for it to be created through the Housing Authority. The initial seed funding and land have already been passed by City Council, and also one of the boards, the ex officio board seats is CHS chair for the organization. Earlier this year, Council approved a bond resolution to allow for $100 million in affordable housing funding. A chunk of that funding was set aside to build what we're calling the Housing Production Fund, about $38 million out of that $100 million. And that's designed really to catalyze these public land projects, move them forward, and allow them to happen, particularly in a housing market where it's really tough to see that move forward. So Invest Atlanta, who manages the Housing Opportunity Bond Program, will manage that portion in partnership with the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. So high-level missions and goals for us on this. One I want to highlight is that we needed a model that was not reliant on low-income housing tax credits. So if you're not familiar with this space, low-income housing tax credits are the workhorse of affordable housing development in the city. Most of the large affordable multifamily deals that you'll see in Atlanta and throughout the country leverage this tool. In Georgia, that has become a competitive space. There's not enough of them to go around. And so candidly, we're not able to hit our 20,000 affordable housing unit goal leaning on that tool alone. So we had to start creatively thinking about how do we add more affordable housing units through different sources. Public land, we think, is a really key part of that and one that we can leverage in unique ways. And so we wanted to build a model that did that. We wanted to do one that thought about long-term affordability and control. How do we stay in the deal long enough so that 30, 40, 70 years from now, when none of us are sitting here in this room, that we've got a high-quality affordable housing mixed-income project. To partner with public agencies, not all of the public agencies that were part of the Mayor's Housing Strike Force build affordable housing, right? You got APS and you've got MARTA and you've got other agencies that are wanting to be helpful, wanting to advance affordable housing, but it may not be essential to their work. So how could we create an organization that can help those types of collaborations and move this collective work forward? And then to catalyze large-scale redevelopment. One of the things that we learned when we formed the Housing Strike Force is that there are a lot of instances around the city where there's different public agencies and departments have land that are adjacent to one another that collectively could be really impactful. Thomasville Heights in Councilman Winston's district is a good example of that. Once we mapped everything, we realized you're talking about 4 different agencies, but you got 80 acres of vacant land when you add it all together. So the opportunity to pull that together and to, in a concerted way, advance work, we think is really helpful and important. So I talked a bit on the challenge side about the low-income housing tax credit or LIHTC limitations. On the toolkit, as we're thinking into it, how do we solve for this problem? Public land, the value of the land itself, typically on a transaction, it's 5 to 10% of the total value of a project. So that's 5 to 10% that can be leveraged to help make the deal more viable. And then additional tools like the Housing Production Fund I mentioned, and even property tax exemption that could go along with the affordability and allow for there to be a real public return, right? If you're ever going to have tax exemption, I think for us, it's a fundamental belief that that needs to have a public good return to it, and affordable housing, I think, fits that gap. So putting public land together, certain kinds of tax exemptions as well as public financing really brings us to a model that's practiced around the world, successfully in Europe and Asia and other places, that's often called social housing. It's really this idea of long-term public participation in deals where you have it's a public-private partnership, right? Where you've got the best of kind of the public long horizon, public good side, and then oftentimes private operation and development of the deal. And so that's really the core of what we're trying to build here with the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. You got deeply affordable rents, using these financing tools and tax exemptions we're talking about, permanent affordability, long-term play, right? We're not selling the dirt, and you don't have 20 years from now you don't know what's going to happen, and then something that can grow with need. So one of the things I think that's key to this, and I'll talk about it in this case study. The Housing Opportunity Commission out of Montgomery County, Maryland, is doing some of the best work on this in the country. Actually, New York Times just highlighted them in an article a few weekends ago, and I'm happy to share it with all of you. It's a really good read. But what they're looking at is something that has a higher percentage of market rate units than we typically see. The way that your traditional low-income housing tax credit LIHTC deals operate is they're really high percentage affordable. It's 85, it's 100% of the units are affordable, and that's based on the way that system is set up. But if we're trying to expand beyond that, we don't have the same tools available, so we've got to think about different ways to bring that affordability online. And so you add the tools that we're talking about, and then you add in market rate units, and that starts to make it more viable. So the deals that are most successful that we've seen around the world, including the ones in Montgomery County, have 60 to 70% of their units at market rate, and then 30%, 40% of their units at affordable. And the market rate units actually help to make the deal cash flow, essentially, right? They cross-subsidize and allow it to stay affordable over time, but they have a longer horizon on it because they're less dependent on this upfront large federal subsidy. And so 30, 40 years from now, you're able to keep them affordable because the market rents help stabilize the project. You also are able to build true mixed income housing, right? Which is often really hard to pull off in today's market. This picture here is a 200-unit project. That project's got 20% of their units at 50% AMI, which is a really hard number to hit at 50% of the median income, and 10% at 80% AMI, and the rest of them at market rate. And they have a very similar housing production fund that helps with the initial construction financing on their deals as well. So quick progress on this, in addition to what's on this slide. So the last time I was up here, board came together. We've got organization stood up. We've got leadership in place and are starting to move forward on some real projects. So first one I'll mention is Thomasville Heights. So there's a city-owned land that council legislation was passed to allow AUDC to lead on. And then we're also working with Atlanta Housing on a potential IGA so that we're starting to kind of pull together those resources and to see a phase one project move forward in 2024. Midtown Fire Station, which is what's pictured here. This is at 10th and Juniper, and we are working closely with the fire department on this one. We'll have an RFQ release later this year on one that would replace the fire station and build housing above it. And then Johnson Road and Gun Club Park, these are just northwest of New West Side Park, along the Proctor Creek Greenway. Both of them touch that. We have community engagement that's just kicked off on that site to look at how, and we're working closely with Commissioner Cutler and Parks on how to think creatively about what the future of that land looks like and how do we bring tree conservation, parks, and housing all together in a way that I think can really be a model project. So all of those are moving forward right now. And then we are also working with Atlanta Public Schools on an IGA that would have the AUDC help with the redevelopment of some of the excess properties that they've identified. So, they're excited to see that move forward. The opportunity to partner with APS, I think, is really key and part of the reason we created this organization to begin with. So that's the updates I got. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Humphreys. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Councilmember Winston.
Thank thank you. Josh, I know we've worked a lot, especially on projects in Thomasville Heights, and I know that, given Commissioner London was talking about, this pro-housing grant that the city is going after, and one of the biggest barriers for affordable housing seems to be a lot of the existing land use and zoning regulations that we have throughout the city of Atlanta, and I know we're tackling that right now in Thomasville Heights, but, how do you see us being able to kind of fast-track that project, kind of throughout the city of Atlanta to help us get towards this affordable housing goal?
Sure. I think Thomasville is a good example for this because we own a lot of the land that is not appropriately zoned for the growth and the way that we're trying to do it. And so working in neighborhoods really alongside those communities to think about what that growth can look like and how to do that in an efficient way. So I think Thomasville is kind of ground zero in a lot of ways for that work and the way we're trying to think about it differently that leverages the land that we have control of. Because candidly, we have too much publicly owned land that's sitting vacant that should be contributing to housing and other key amenities that we have. So starting there and getting that land zoned correctly, I think is important. But the pro-housing grant that they're working on, we work closely with them on, and I think thinking creatively, not only about the zoning, but what comes after that, right? Accessory dwelling units, how do we allow for, not necessarily even, they're allowed in a lot of areas in the city right now, or do we have the financial infrastructure in place that enables moderate income homeowners to take advantage of that and to build that and earn wealth that way. So I think there's a lot zoning is a part of it, but there's a lot of pieces of that grant and the work that we're doing, I think, can help move that forward and allow us to have more diverse housing stock.
And one other question, a lot of the housing work that you all will be working on, do you see any correlation between that and helping with commercial development in some of these areas too? And if so, what are some challenges there you think that, legislatively we could work on to kind of help with that as well?
Sure. On commercial development, oftentimes it's a rooftops question, right? You need enough people living in a neighborhood and a diversity of incomes in order to make a grocery store viable oftentimes. And so a lot of it is going to be building housing, right? Building housing, I think, in a place like Thomasville is going to make a grocery store more viable, make, basic retail in the neighborhood, coffee shop, restaurant, things like that more viable. But we also don't want to wait 10 years for there to be those things in our neighborhoods. And so one thing I'd be interested in working with you on, I think is top of mind for us, is how can we, on the commercial side, subsidize and bring in the types of amenities that we want to see in neighborhoods that we're not seeing right now. What does it take to bring a fresh food access point to a neighborhood that's not serviced by one right now? We know we're building the housing, hopefully, which means it's going to be viable 5 years from now, 7 years from now. It's not viable now. So can we subsidize that? Can we bring in additional resources to bring those amenities to neighborhoods who need them today, right? The residents need them now. We know that the long-term viability is going to need the households there, and so your support continuing to push that and bring housing is important. But I also think thinking through resources that can move the needle now ahead of that housing coming will be key.
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate all the work you all are doing. One thing that I think would be a good idea, maybe seeing if we can expand is, the Beltline marketplace is maybe seeing about doing that in some of our neighborhoods and seeing if that's something that, we can look and expand across the city of Atlanta. But otherwise, very happy to see the progress that you all are making and appreciative. Thank you.
Other questions or comments for colleagues? I just have one more for you, Josh. With the private real estate market, we've seen some big deals fall through.
Yep.
2 of them were my district with Mall West End, with Newport. What have y'all seen as maybe potential implications for the social housing model with the public being a bigger stakeholder? Does that give developers more of a warm fuzzy that there's some stability and that the city is an equity partner and thus there's not going to be as much concern about long-term delivery objectives? Just kind of what are y'all seeing? I know we have 2 Peachtree, we have 104 Trent, we have a lot of projects that are in different phases. So I'm just kind of curious, just with your lens, what's going on that?
The reality in the marketplace is hard to make any deal work right now, right? With interest rates where they are, with construction costs where they are. If it weren't for the housing bond that was passed by this council earlier this year, we'd still have deals stalled out that had been stalled out since 2020, right? And so we've been able to infuse capital into deals, close gaps, and make them happen. I think that the work that we're talking about here with the AUDC and the Housing Production Fund, at the end of the day, what it does is it reduces risk on the deal. It makes a deal a little bit more viable than it would have otherwise been. And so I think that it's actually really it will help projects move forward that otherwise would not move forward, right? You're able to go into a deal and take on a larger, the way that this model is set up, it takes on a larger percentage of the capital stack, so the way the deal finances, it takes on a larger percentage of the gap, and allows projects that, candidly just like wouldn't work to be able to work. And I think in exchange for making those projects work, we're able to ask for the affordability that we want to see, right? That's the trade-off in it. And so it is a hard time to make any deal work, but we're optimistic that these tools will allow some deals to move forward and allow us to get some affordability in deals that maybe otherwise wouldn't have had any at all in them.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis.
And because Councilmember Dozier opened the door, is the past couple of reports we've gotten today, they could all run together. And I'm just wondering if the city that started public housing, now this first city that got rid of most of it, we only have 2 left. If we would look at Thomasville, apologies for talking about your area, but I remember when I would stay nights in Thomasville, we would go over to the grocery store that was where we're now building affordable housing. Then we would go play pool at the pool hall that was next door to that.
Yeah, sure.
And so I know there's the city, and that city-owned land, and then there's 4 different owners, but at one time it was all housing city ran.
Sure, yeah.
So I know in my district we still have Pool Creek, and a portion we share, we still got, in Jonesboro South, which is, so is the city looking to get more involved in this, get our hands more dirty, not more dirty, get our hands more involved, to show the love, to show the innovation that Atlanta showed before. And I'm thinking about this department that we just created with the smartest folks to work for our city in it. I believe in it. Are we looking at public-public partnerships and not just public-private partnerships?
Sure. So the article that I mentioned that the Montgomery County model was about, was titled in the New York Times, "It's public housing, just don't call it that." And I think that the way we think about this is trying to take the best of public housing and the best of private market-based housing and bring them together, right? There are a lot of good things about public housing. It's long-term affordability, long-term public ownership, long-term kind of responsibility of the public to provide housing. But there was challenges around operating costs and deferred maintenance and other things that led to their deterioration, not just in Atlanta, but around the country. And so the way that this model tries to look at that is bringing in the market rate units allows the properties to have less issues with being able to pay for maintenance costs and otherwise, but still keeps in this long-term public ownership stake in it so that you're able to have this public housing-like element where you've got long-term permanent affordability that doesn't phase out, that doesn't go away over time. And there's a public responsibility to make sure that property exists and serves a public good. And so part of what we find really compelling about this model is exactly what I think you're getting at, is like, how do we have something that takes the best parts of public housing and reintroduces it back into the housing ecosystem? Because we do need this type of permanent affordability throughout our city, but to do it in mixed income ways, to do it in ways that are more sustainable, that are candidly less dependent on the federal government, right? Because one of the things that was challenging with public housing is when the federal government started cutting funding from it, then it wasn't able to sustain itself. And so I think this model addresses a lot of those downsides, but allows us to reintroduce some of the things you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. But in public, what I meant was, I'm thinking about school board in the city of Atlanta, or in the public agencies that we can work with on some of the own land that we have.
Yeah.
Because the city, we can do deeply affordable. We have 50% AMI, but we know Fed accepts 30%. And I want to see more 30% when we pass these by. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Councilman Amos.
Yes, sir. First and foremost, thank you. I'm glad to see us in the game, because we have done everything we could possibly legally do when it comes to regulations and ordinance. So I'm glad to see we're out there. Tricky question. I know it's a trick question, so if you need to bring us back to answer, you can. Right. Delays in any development project adds to the bottom cost, in which we ultimately pass on to the buyer.
Sure.
I get constant calls from developers being caught up in all level of permitting.
Yeah.
Will you see DC get caught up in the same time length it takes to get a permit out this building? And if not, how can the regular developer use those same skills not to be held up in permitting?
Sure. So we have been working closely with Commissioner Prince and the planning department around expediting, here's the way, the way I think about these deals, right? There's a lot of hair on a public land deal, right? It's complicated. You're dealing with multiple boards and agencies. It's much more complicated than the two of you doing a transaction together, right? And so there's a disincentive to work with public agencies because of that. And so we think about how do we remove as much of that, make it as favorable and advantageous as possible so that this is the deal you want to do. You'd rather work with us because you're going to get this package of incentives. You're going to get white glove service when you call in. You're going to because then that allows us to have these types of deals that hit the affordability numbers and stuff we want. And so we've been working closely on how that works in a way that I think it's advantageous to ensure that these deals coming through the Housing Authority and others get the best service of anyone, right? So that we're sending a message like this is you want to get the fastest time through City Hall. Come and work on these affordable housing deals with us, and to create an atmosphere and a market where that's a valuable thing to have. But broadly, the work we've been doing with the planning department is making sure that every deal that's got affordable housing has got a special team that's working through, that's making sure those deals don't get held up. They're able to move forward, right? Because you're absolutely right, especially with where interest rates are and construction cost increases. Every month, every day, costs extra money on that deal. And a lot of those, the ones that were stalled out since 2020 that I mentioned, they're like, well, when I started, I had a $1 million gap, and now I got a $4 million gap. The gap doesn't get smaller, right? And so I think it's incumbent on us from a systems level approach. Yes, we want to close the gaps on the backside, but having a shorter runway on the front end ensures the gap doesn't get any bigger once we close it. And so that's something we've been working closely on, and I think that the biweekly pipeline team. So we got a group that gets together from all the different public agencies, including the planning department on the permitting side. They get together biweekly and say, here's our core projects that all have affordable housing on them. Where are they at? What's stuck? What can we move forward? And I think that type of collaborative approach and really being able to see how the pieces fit together have allowed our projects to increase kind of our ability to get through and move forward. But I know it's an evolving process, and the planning is always doing things to improve that. But I do think we've actually made a lot of improvements on that front, and it's making it easier to see these projects through.
Thank you, Councilman Amos. Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, Mr. Humphries. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
All right, colleagues, that concludes our presentations. We already took the public hearing item. We already took communication, so that takes us to, we have no ordinances for first reading, so that takes the ordinance for second reading, which is item number 5, ordinance 23-1571. Mr. Evans, if you can sound that caption, and Deputy Commissioner Voss, there you go. If you can come to the podium.
Item number 5 is 23-1571, an ordinance by Community Development and Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Atlanta Department of Parks and Recreation to accept a reimbursement grant from the state of Georgia under the Improving Neighborhood Outcomes in Disproportionately Impacted Communities Grant Program funded through the American Rescue Plan Act via state fiscal recovery funds in an amount not to exceed $2,032,301.70 in accordance with Section 2-910 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, and authorizing the amendment to the fiscal year 2024 grant fund budget to anticipate and appropriate the reimbursement of grant funds, and authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to accept and authorize use of grant funds from the state of Georgia and for other purposes.
Deputy Commissioner Voss.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of council. It's my honor to introduce to you Tara Buckner. She is our urban planner for the Office of Park Design. She actually applied for and received this grant for $2 million, so I'd like to give her an opportunity to talk to you about it. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Tara?
Good afternoon, Chair Dozier and CDHS committee, council members. DPR is asking you to approve the acceptance and authorization for this grant of ARPA funds through the state for the project that we're calling Pandemic Park Overuse Repair, Installation, and Maintenance Project. It will improve Stone Hogan Park, Lillian Cooper Shepherd, Oak Knoll 1, and Oak Knoll 2 parks. And the total amount is $2,032,301.70.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from colleagues? The motion to approve by Westmoreland. There's a second by Lewis. I do have a quick question before we open the vote. What is typically described as overuse? Like what type of activities, what type of repair work is being done as part of this process?
Oh, gee. For each of these parks, it's different. For Stone Hogan, which is the majority of the grant will go to that project, we will be installing a new pavilion, a new playground, exercise equipment, a trail, a new gate so that it closes at the front of the gate instead of allowing people to park after hours, and many more things. For Lillian Cooper Shepherd, there's a playground, there's improvement to the driveway into the park, and some lighting. Currently, they have solar lighting, but because of our lovely tree canopy, you really can't see in the dark. And then the 2 Oak Knoll parks, they're very small parks, and they will get a bench and a trash can.
Thank you so much. So there's a motion and a second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Okay, the vote is closed.
Item is favorable. I presume favorable.
It's 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you so much. Took a little long to populate on my screen. 5 yeas, 0 nays. That takes us to the next item, number 6. Colleagues, we do have a substitute for item number 6 that does change the captions. The substitute also cleans up some language and it adds account information. I will move to bring forward the substitute. There's a second by Westmoreland. There's already a second by Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the item has been substituted, 5 yeas, 0 nays. I think we have Ms. Serena Walker, Deputy Director of Finance for the Department of Labor and Employment Services, to speak to this item.
If I may read in the substitute caption.
Thank you so much. Please read in the substitute.
It's item number 6, 23-0-1576, an ordinance by Councilmember Jason H. Winston as substituted by the Community Development and Human Services Committee to amend the FY24 general fund budget to create 5 trust fund projects under the Department of Labor and Employment Services Support Trust Fund for the purpose of funding signature program initiatives of the mayor related to 1, the Mayor's Youth Leadership Institute, 2, Summer Youth Employment Program, 3, on-the-job training, 4, ATL Quick Path, and 5, Apprenticeship ATL on behalf of the Department of Labor and Employment Services, authorizing the utilization of the funds to pay for expenses related to the city's administration of the mayor's programmatic initiatives through December 31st, 2029, authorizing the city to accept donations to support the mayor's program initiatives in a total annual amount not to exceed $750,000.00 through December 31st, 2029, to be deposited into the trust fund projects and for other purposes.
Dr. Serena Walker, good to see you.
Good to see you each also. Good afternoon, Chairman Dozier and members of the committee. As well stated, the legislation before us is for the establishment of a trust fund with pockets designated for the programs that have been mentioned, and collectively we are considering them the mayor's signature programs that will take place and be implemented under the Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services, with donations not to exceed $750,000 annually through December 31st of 2029. There has been one initial deposit so far from the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce for the Mayor's Youth Leadership Initiative in the amount of $30,000.
Any questions or comments for this item? There's a motion to approve on substitute by Winston. I will second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
All right, the item is favorable on substitute, 5 yeas, 0 nays. And colleagues, please be advised that this is a dual referred item. It will be forwarded to the Finance Executive Committee tomorrow, for that agenda tomorrow. So I know several of our committee members are on that committee, so you'll have another crack at the bat. All right, next item, number 7.
Item number 7 is 23-0-1585, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone to amend the 2021 Annual Action Plan budget of the 2020 through 2024 Consolidated Plan and the FY 2023 Intergovernmental Grant Fund budget for the purpose of reprogramming housing opportunities for persons with AIDS program in an amount not to exceed $260,000.00, authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Department of Grants and Community Development to enter into a service agreement with Africa Children's Fund for the purpose of provisions of housing and/or services to the HIV/AIDS affected individuals and/or families. All contracted work shall be charged to and paid from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes.
Deputy Commissioner Genevieve Jones, with the Department of Grants and Community Development. Good to see you once again.
Thank you. You keep giving me a promotion. Is there something I should know?
Oh, sorry. I just go with the notes in front of me. Apologies.
Director Jones here. So this is just to provide some funding to Africa's Children Fund. They are already one of our project sponsors, and we just want to make sure that we have a continuation of services for the individuals experiencing homelessness.
There's a motion to approve by Westmoreland. I will second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Item is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you so much, Director Jones. My apologies. All right, next item, number 8.
23-0-1586, an ordinance by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond to amend Ordinance 19-0-1156, which created a consolidated trust fund to provide a permanent funding mechanism for the Atlanta student movement for the purpose of broadening the scope to include other historic individuals, things, and places within the city of Atlanta and for other purposes.
All right, colleagues, I saw Councilmember Bond not too long ago. However, on his face, I don't have really any issues with this particular item. This is a dual referred item. My only concern and question is with regards to the financing and how it's financed, but I know that's more of a conversation with CFO Bala. And so I'm happy to move this forward out of this committee on that condition that we find a funding source related to that. So we can, Councilmember Bond, did you want to, before we start taking some legislative items on action on your paper, I want to give you a chance to speak to it.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, members of the public. No, we just want to expand officially the use of this particular fund because we're getting more and more demands on wanting to acknowledge, historic people, places, and things.
Understood, and I don't know if you heard part of my comment earlier, just recognizing that I imagine some conversations with CFO as far as the funding source to support this. I think we're good to move this out of committee so that there's
no, the funds are there already. This is just expanding the use. So this fund was created when we were beginning our work on the Atlanta Student Movement Trail. And so we want to just increase the scope of what the funds can be used for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. It's a second by Amos. Any discussion? Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Item is favorable. Well, stand by.
Right. Thank you.
Getting ahead of myself.
5 yeas and 0 nays.
And that is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. And as I was saying before, this is dual referred for Finance Executive for tomorrow. So if there are any questions about the funding and financing, I imagine that will be addressed and adjudicated in that committee. All right, next item, number 9.
23-015-87, an ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos to waive the requirements of Section 2-910 of the Atlanta City Code to retroactively authorize and to ratify the mayor or his designee's submission of an application of an anti-displacement grant with Rocket Community Fund for the purpose of providing property tax assistance to the City of Atlanta homeowners in an amount not to exceed $250,000.00, authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept said grant and for other purposes.
We have Commissioner Greg Clay with the Office of Constituent Services. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair. And so thank you, Chair and members of the council. This particular opportunity is one that comes out of the work that we do every day. We oftentimes, as a department, are talking with constituents that are looking for either rental assistance or mortgage assistance. This type of assistance is, of course, specifically for those homeowners looking for some type of relief. As I've become accustomed to this role in this capacity, what we see more of is the opportunity for us to provide direct assistance for those constituents that come to see us here at City Hall. And so in my conversations with partners in the nonprofit world and also in the philanthropic community, we saw it fitting to apply for a grant related to anti-displacement dollars with the Rocket Community Fund. One of the things that we considered was to apply next calendar year. In knowing that this is a retroactive opportunity, we saw that the October deadline enabled us to, if given the opportunity with the dollars, to start the funding earlier, as early as January, potentially with some of those 65 years or older constituents that will be seeking, again, that assistance. And so we're here today to not just answer any questions, but also seek authorization, if given the opportunity through the application process, where we could potentially receive these dollars, be able to accept them on the city's behalf.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Since Councilman Ramus is the lead alder, I'll give him the motion, and then I'll give Councilman Westmoreland the second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
And item is favorable, 5 ayes, 0 nays. And I'll just add as a comment, just appreciative of Rocket Community Mortgage and their partnership with the City of Atlanta. Our office had an initiative with them earlier this year, was supporting some of our seniors in their home repairs in District 4 and helping them get off the wait list with House Proud. So I just appreciate their continued commitment to the city and to its residents. So just thank y'all for moving the.
Yes, sir. We hope we get the good news. And as soon as we get the good news, we'll certainly let you and the other members of the council know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, next item, number 10.
23-015-88, an ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to transfer an amount not to exceed $40,000.00 from the Council District 3 Discretionary Fund to the Department of Parks and Recreation, allocating $20,000.00 to support maintenance of the Charles L. Harper statue and $20,000.00 for the purchase of 12 trash receptacles for Washington Cook Park and 12 trash receptacles for Anderson Park and for other purposes.
Councilman Ramus.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna make a motion to file this, but for all my people listening, we're gonna file it, but we're walking in another piece of legislation to make some major changes to this. I just want them to know and don't get mad and cut off the TV. So motion to file.
There's a motion to file by Amos, second by Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
That has been filed by the committee, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Colleagues, that concludes ordinances for second reading. That takes us to resolutions. And if y'all are okay with it, I would like to take items number 11 and 12 together as a block. The recommended action is going to be the same for both of those items. Seeing no issues, we'll go ahead and take 11 and 12 together as a block.
Item number 11 is 23R4341, a resolution by Councilmember Matt Westmoreland authorizing the City of Atlanta to donate a total amount not to exceed $1 million and 0 cents to Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta pursuant to Section 6-306 of the City of Atlanta's Charter to support the Atlanta Year of the Youth Safe Spaces program, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into any necessary agreements to effectuate the donation and to authorize the Chief Financial Officer or his designee to make all payments from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes. Item number 12 is 23R4343, A resolution by council members Marcy Collier Overstreet and Andrea L. Boone authorizing the city of Atlanta to donate a total amount not to exceed $20,000.00 to the Atlanta Children's Shelter pursuant to Section 6-306 of the City of Atlanta's Charter to support the provision of early childhood education for children experiencing homelessness, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into any necessary agreements to effectuate the donation, and to authorize the chief financial officer or his designee to make all payments from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes.
Colleagues, for both these items, there's a ask from the administration to hold. I believe there's some additional work with the account strings that needs to be hashed out before we can move this forward. So I'll go ahead and move to hold both items. There's a second by Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. Okay, 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you. 5 yeas and 0 nays. Both items are held. That takes us to item number 13.
13 is 23R4346, a resolution by Councilmember Amir Faroki consenting to the creation of the Little Five Points City Business Improvement District as authorized by OCGA 36431 at sequential and based on the written consent of the majority of the municipal taxpayers within the district and for other purposes.
All right, we have with us today Lauren Wells, Executive Director for the Little Five Points Community Improvement District. If you don't mind, please share with us a little insight about this legislation.
Yeah, so I am the Executive Director of the Little Five Points CID, or Community Improvement District. And you know that we have CIDs throughout Atlanta, many of them like Midtown, Downtown, Buckhead, bringing in millions of dollars a year in tax increments based on their commercial property values. In Little Five Points, pretty sure you're all familiar with that place, and hopefully you were there this past weekend for the Halloween parade, which was crazy. We are a little bit more of a unique district. We're fortunate to be sitting at the same table with folks like Jim Durrett and Elizabeth Hollister and Kevin Green when they are advocating for Department of Transportation policies towards CIDs. At the same time, we collect a tax increment between $35,000 and $45,000 a year, not multi-million dollars a year. We are just a smaller district, and a CID, it can only go so far. So what we have looked into is a tool that's used in other areas in the state of Georgia and is actually pretty popular in other cities around the country. It's called a business improvement district, and the main difference is that it can bring in multifamily apartment owners as well. So the Little Five Point District has several apartments that are right in the thread of that district, are very much a part of it, and benefit significantly when we're able to fund projects for either infrastructure or cleanups or security. And we want to pull them in so we can actually raise more in our tax increment. If we were able to form a BID, we would be able to triple the amount we can bring in annually to about $100,000, which is still a fraction of what the larger CIDs bring in, but it would allow us to invest more in supplemental services around issues of public safety and parking management, which really are the biggest issues for commercial property owners, business owners, and residents in the Little Five Points District. So I am asking for your support in creating a business improvement district in Little Five Point.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Motion to approve by Westmoreland. I will second. I will also share that I did speak with the author of legislation, Councilmember Faroki, and I had to have him explain to me what a BID was. I have a master's in public administration. I still had to have someone explain to me what a BID was. So I appreciate the city of Atlanta, an institution within the city of Atlanta, pursuing this as, and hopefully becoming an example for other communities to look at ways in which how they can improve their own communities. So not to keep using the improvement in community and district too many times together, but thank you so much. There's a motion by Westmoreland, second by Dozier. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Item is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, and then we have item number 14, our next resolution.
23R4351, a resolution by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond establishing the City of Atlanta's Reparations Study Commission to research the role of the City of Atlanta, the City of Atlanta played in the legal discrimination of African American residents and its impact, to provide recommendations for appropriate redress or reparations for harm inflicted and for other purposes.
And I know we've heard from the public on this issue, both in committee today as well as at full council last week. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve. There's a second by Winston. Any discussion or any additional remarks and comments from Councilmember Bond? We just made the motion to approve, but I don't know if you want to add anything to it before we take a vote. All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Item is favorable. 5 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you, Councilmember Bond. All right, that concludes, let's see, number 14. All right, item number 15.
Number 15 is 23R4416, a resolution by Community Development and Human Services Committee to correct Resolution 23R3517, authorizing the city to accept land improvements from Empire Communities, which was adopted by the Atlanta City Council on June 20th, 2023, and approved per City Charter Section 2-403 on June 29th, 2023, on behalf of the Department of Parks and Recreation by identifying the correct acreage of the land and the correct value of the land as improved, which includes site work, landscape, and hardscape improvements to expand Lane Carson Park. All other parts of the legislation shall remain unchanged and for other purposes.
Deputy Commissioner Voss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of council. Just as a recap, this passed council in June. And just when the appraisal and the land donation went through, it included a larger part of the improvement of the land. If you know Lane Carson Park, they've made a lot of improvements to private property as well as public property. That appraisal included about an acre. The actual amount that's coming to the city is more like 0.44 acres. So the donation would then go from about $3.1 million worth of value to about 2.5. Still an excellent deal for the city. We're very appreciative of the work of Empire Communities with the donation, and Lane Carson's become a great park, so we appreciate it.
So motion to approve by Westmoreland. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Item is favorable, 5 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Item 16 is 23R4417, a resolution by Community Development and Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to accept a donation from the National Fitness Campaign and the 2023 Muscle Milk Community Wellness Program to the Department of Parks and Recreation of improvements valued at $500,000.00, which will include an outdoor fitness court with artwork and a yoga pad installed at D.H. Stanton Park, located at 213 Haygood Avenue, Southeast Atlanta, Georgia, 30315, and for other purposes.
All right, Ms. Buckner, welcome back.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about this particular donation and go from there.
Okay, it's a fitness court. It will be installed at D.H. Stanton. If you come through the front of what we call the front of the park, it'll be just to your right of the awning. It will be installed on a concrete pad, and it will be a benefit to the community.
Thank you. Councilman Winston.
Move approval.
There's a motion by Winston. There's a second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 4 yeas and 0 nays.
The item is favorable, 4 yeas, 0 nays. And I expect my District 1 colleague to come to City Hall extra limber now that he's getting a yoga pad in his district. All right, next item.
Item 17 is 23R4418, a resolution by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to apply for and accept a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency FY 2024 Brownfields Assessment Grant from the U.S. Department by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in an amount not to exceed $500,000.00 for the purpose of conducting community-wide brownfield assessments, authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into any necessary agreements with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in connection with this grant and for other purposes.
Jessica Lavinier with the Department of City Planning. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. So EPA opened up its grant application for FY24 in September, the end of September, and grants are due November 13. So we would like to apply for a assessment grant. And we would, if it's awarded, we would conduct phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments and cleanup plans in target areas throughout the city, areas that are impacted by brownfields.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and move approval. Second by Winston. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Items favorable, 4 yeas, 0 nays. Colleagues, that concludes resolutions. We have no dual referred items, so that takes us to papers held in committee. We do have one item, number 43, which is communication 23-C-5106, which is going to come off of held, or that we need to take action on. Mr. Evans, if you can sound that caption, and then we'll go from there.
Item 43, 23C-5106, a communication from council members Jason Winston, District 1, Amir Faroki, District 2, and Michael Julian Bond, Post 1 at large, appointing Mr. Steve Tellis to serve as a member of the Atlanta Urban Design Commission. This appointment is for a term of 3 years.
Colleagues, there's an ask to have this particular communication filed just with regards to the qualifications that needed for this particular appointment. Stand by, public. All right, so with that, I'll make the motion to file. Second by Winston. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed, 4 yeas and 0 nays.
And the item has been filed, 4 yeas, 0 nays. Colleagues, we do have one more item we're going to pull off of held. This is resolution 23-R-4162, item number 42. If you can sound that caption, and we'll go from there.
A resolution by council members Michael Julian Bond and Byron D. Amos to request a portion of reprogrammed community development block grant funds in an amount not to exceed $18,000.00 be authorized to support the initiatives of the Vine City Civic Association and for other purposes.
And I believe to speak to this, we'll have Councilmember Michael Julian Bond. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to be back. It's good to be back. But thank you for considering this paper. I would like to recommend that it would be moved on condition. I spoke with the mayor about the paper on Friday and spoke with Mr. Pace this morning. He's out of town, but they have identified a different funding source. The issue on the timing and moving the paper is that they are already so far behind on needing these funds that we want to make sure that the paper is moving to get to the next council meeting so that they can receive the funds and deal with their issue.
And so just so I understand that the ask is to move on condition of identifying a funding source ahead of the next full council meeting.
Yeah, by the next council meeting.
Okay. I'm no issues with that. I'll move to approve on condition, and I'll say it again, of finding a funding source for this particular project ahead of the next city council meeting, which I believe is on November the 6th, Monday, November the 6th.
I think it's the 6th, yeah. Yeah, November the 6th.
Before we take a vote, we have Amber A. Robinson, Department of Law.
Hi, Amber A. Robinson, City of Atlanta Department of Law. Just wanted to clarify that I believe it would be moving forward on condition of a identification of another funding source, which will require a substitute, as this resolution sets forth in the caption that the funding would be the CDBG funds, and I believe that would be replaced, as I understand it.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification, what she said. So we'll go ahead and open that vote.
The vote is open.
I am as favorable on condition, 4 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you, Councilmember Bond.
You know, I don't want to second guess the Bible. They said it was 3 wise men, but I see 4 wise men right in here today. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, colleagues, that concludes held items. We do have one walk-in paper. This is legislation that Councilmember Amos has just walked in. Mr. Evans, do you need to sound a caption or, okay.
I will. This has Elms ID 33917. It's a resolution by Community Development and Human Services Committee to authorize the City of Atlanta to donate a total amount not to exceed $100,000.00 to Park Pride pursuant to Section 6-306 of the City of Atlanta's Charter to provide maintenance support for the Charles L. Harper Park in an amount not to exceed $20,000.00 and for the purchase of 12 trash receptacles for Washington Park, 6 trash receptacles for Rodney Cook Park, and 4 trash receptacles for Charles Rambo Park in an amount not to exceed $80,000.00 and for other purposes.
Amos.
Yes, sir. This is the change paper from the one that we filed, actually a loan due overdue promise to Washington Park residents on just an ongoing battle on how do we keep our parks clean for our residents. And then also Charles L. Harper Park, which is a small pocket park, but a very important park to the west side, housing the statue of Principal Charles L. Harper, which was the first principal of Washington High School. Just an ongoing effort to beautify our community, and motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. It's 4 yeas, 0 nays.
It's favorable, 4 yeas, 0 nays. That concludes walk-in legislation. No requested items. General remarks, colleagues. Any general remarks? I have a couple. Councilmember Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make 2 announcements about 2 great events happening this Saturday in District 1. We have the Urban Food Forest in Browns Mill will be having their Harvest Festival this Saturday in Browns Mill, and that will be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the Benteen Park will be having their first annual Fall Festival in Benteen Park. Happy to sponsor this event that will be happening from 11 to 6 in Benteen Park this Saturday in District 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Winston. Councilmember Lewis.
Just want to let people know that today at South Atlanta High School, we're having our Fall Festival at 4:30 p.m. South Atlanta High School. Please pull up. Look forward to partying with the purple and teal today. This Friday at Roselle Fan Recreation Center, we'll be having the 7th installment of our Free Food Friday giveaways. Free Food Friday giveaways. That's a tongue twister. But this Friday, we'll be continuing with the 7th edition of that. On the following Monday, Halloween, we'll be having another trunk or treat. The trunk or treat will be at Perkison Park starting at 6 p.m. We'll be having another trunk or treat at Roselle Fan Recreation Center starting at 6 p.m. We'll be having another trunk or treat in the Pittsburgh community at Blueprint 58 starting at 6 p.m. So we have a trunk or treat in all parts of District 12 starting at 6 p.m. on Halloween. So look forward to seeing folks coming on out so we can have a little fun together.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Councilmember Amos.
Just want to remind all of our senior citizens this Saturday is the Mayor's Senior Ball. think it's too late to register, but if you have registered, please get ready for a roaring good time, as we always have with our very young population. So just want to remind everyone, if you haven't gotten your information and you did register, please reach out to the mayor's office or constituent service to make sure you have everything.
Thank you, Councilmember Amos. Just a couple of announcements. I've alluded to this earlier, but our next city council meeting will be on Monday, November the 6th. Typically, we have a full council meeting the week after committee week. However, next week is the 5th Monday of the month, so go out, celebrate Halloween. If you celebrate Halloween with your families, don't be here at City Hall with us. But then after our next council meeting on November 6th, on November 7th, the Community Development Human Service Committee and the City Utilities Committee are hosting a joint work session about the stormwater and flooding issues we've been experiencing across the city, with particular focus on our central and west side communities near the Atlanta University Center, near Vine City, English Avenue, and near downtown. We will have representation from the Office of Sustainability, Department of Watershed Management, and others to talk about the city's efforts to address the stormwater challenges that our city has been facing in the wake of climate change. That will be 1:00 p.m. Here in the Larry Dinkle Conference Room. And it's also Election Day that day, so be sure to go vote either early between now and then or vote on Election Day. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.